Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. A little bit of an unusual one. This is not a drone stuff week this week. This is talking to David Waters of a company whose name I struggle to say or wonder how to say. I think, is it Consortiq?
Consortiq.
Consortiq. You see, I knew I'd get it wrong. I knew I was getting it wrong. And you're going to run us through some software that you have, David. And I deliberately haven't learned much about it in order that you can tell me everything about it now, and I can ask some dumb questions. I think it's called CQNet, and I think it's going to help me manage multiple UAS or even just a single operator UAS. Maybe you'd like to take me by the hand then and tell me what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So CQNet is our flight safety management system that we've developed with manned aviation experience and unmanned aviation experience. I've been operating in the industry as a commercial operator. Started off as a spotter helping out with organisations about 6 years ago, and then about 4 or 5 years ago became a commercial operator myself. And I experienced the pains that us operators go through with managing paperwork, planning missions, and being in that situation where you're fighting the weather, you're doing a big survey, and you've got those 30 flights that you need to get in before the weather window closes. There had to be a smarter solution. So we developed CQNet, and it's there to support organisations that have multiple UAS operators, even operating globally in some cases with some of the clients that we're working with. And it gives them the overview and the insight into operations that are currently going on, ones that have been planned and ones that have been completed. But then from an operator's perspective, you get everything you need in the palm of your hand with a nifty little app that we've developed, where all your mission data is stored, your pre-flight checks. It just simplifies the process and streamlines it, but also makes it a safer operation, we believe, as well.
So, but why do I need it then? But what, why? How much? Exactly what pain is it taking away from me?
Well, we find with the flight planning side of things, when we are, let's say we have an area to survey, we're using Google Maps to visualize areas. We may be going to NATS to get ATC details for the nearest airport. We could be using various other sources for airspace data that might not necessarily be up to date or relevant. But within our system, we're putting in live real-time NOTAM data. We've got live airspace data. We're bringing in weather system information. In a one-stop shop, we can plan your mission, define your mission area, identify ground risks that, again, looking at Google Maps generally, you might not be able to see critical infrastructure, power lines, etc. so clearly. And I think that's probably one of the saving graces of this system for the operator, because again, I could spend 2 or 3 hours old school way planning my operations for 20 flights in a day, and now within CQNet, I can probably do it in under 5 minutes.
And so I plan my flight, I get everything ready, sort it all out, deconflict myself with everything that's around, and make sure nothing bad's happening, NOTAM wise, that sort of thing. Then I do my flight. So can I then plan my flight within your app, or is that still with the flight planning tools I'd use for the different aircraft?
Yes, at the moment, when we say we're planning a flight, we define the flight area and you get that risk information. You still are required, if you're using a DJI system or a 3DR, use their mission planning apps, etc. We're not at the command and control level yet, as it might be, but right. We're talking with manufacturers, not necessarily some of the low-level ones, but the high-level ones, the aerotronics, the pulses, to enable a streamlined process for waypoint planning within the system to be sent up to the drone, etc., and to enhance some of the functionality. But we are going to start off at the basic level and bring some of that functionality in, because especially on the 3DR systems, etc., with the Pixel flight controllers, RD Pilot, it's quite a simple process to do. And we're looking at bringing that in as one of the development modules we have coming up.
Okay, that's great. No, well, yeah, an awful lot of us are completely in touch with with the RG pilot world. And in fact, that would then mean you could also pull in some of the ADS-B goodness that's coming their way as well. So let's just park that a second. So you've done your flight using whatever you needed to do that flight, and then you've come home in time for tea and medals. What happens to the data afterwards? So you've done your flight, then what happens?
Yeah, so you can upload your flight log data from that mission. The system will pass out the flight log to quite a detailed level, to essentially what the manufacturer can see. And we pick the key pieces of information that's required to be shown, because obviously there's a lot of information in the flight log that might not be relevant to you as the typical drone operator as it might be. You might not want to see some of the in-depth stuff, but we can show you your flight paths, your max altitude, your max point from takeoff, battery voltages, flight times. And it's really important, I think, that as an operator and with organizations, to start relying more on utilizing the flight log data as opposed to manually entered data, because you're able to pick up with the flight log data some things that could be mission critical. There could be a hardware issue that maybe the operator didn't notice in flight. We can flag that from the flight log data itself, and potentially, save an incident from happening.
Yeah, I mean, there could be health data, couldn't there? And there's no, I think I'm right in saying there's absolutely no standard at the moment. Oh, excuse me. In what logging actually happens, but if you add RPM monitoring in each motor, and you might trend monitor performance of motors and notice one of them failing or something like that. That's surely has to be something that has to come in the future. But I guess people like you are hampered at the moment because there's no standard way of logging all that information from each manufacturer.
Yeah, and I think that's quite a common thing across the entire industry with the data, the way it's recorded, the way it's presented, not just with the flight log data, data transmission sets from telemetry systems, the way data is presented in report formats for summaries of flights, CAA reports, NNA reports. There doesn't seem to be a consistent standard format. But hopefully, at some point, the UAS industry will help formulate that structure and make it transparent across the market.
So do you find, what am I trying to say here? Do you find, well, I mean, how many different manufacturers can you automatically pull logs from, for instance?
So at the moment, we can pass everything from the DJI systems, and that's from P3 up to the Inspire 2, the Mavics, the M600s. So pretty much all of the DJI range. We can do the 3DRs, the Pixels, the RD pilots. We can do all of the unique systems. We're now working with Aerotronics to start passing out some of their log data, as well as Pulse Aero. So the system went live at AEVSI a couple of weeks ago. And the more people we're getting on board using these systems and bringing in different systems that maybe we're not aware of or exposed to, we're using that relationship to then talk to the manufacturers and begin passing their data out.
It's going to be a bit of a factor, I think, isn't it, in the future? Buying decisions for commercial companies is can we use the data that's being produced easily? And I should imagine that would stop some people buying some systems if they couldn't plug and play into, well, I suppose again, into a standardized sort of a logging system, and then it would be up to you to differentiate as to whether you'd be the management tool I'd use. I've been the only. A pilot logging I'll mention, because a couple of days ago I saw a chap on the Book of the Face claiming in the last 4 years to have logged 8,000 flying hours with DJI equipment, which is pretty good going. I don't know how many hours a day that is. So obviously there needs to be some logging standards just to stop Captain Parker coming to play a lot. And I'll stop ranting. Sorry, you lead me through. You've got a map coming up there. Lead me through that map. Is there something you can show me on that page you're sharing there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, the system's designed to not only support an organisation, but also to support the drone operators as well. And we're not, without having the drone operators on board and having a suitable workflow that suits their flying kind of process, etc., you're not going to win anyone. So we ensure that it supports the drone operators as well as the organisation itself. So when you first log into CQNet, you essentially get a world map, and on the world map we've got various pins dotted all over, and these are various missions that have been planned on the system, and they're at different stages. So immediately, from an organisational point of view, I can set some filters. I remove those and just say, right, I just want to see all of the flights that have been planned, let's say, in a draft stage. So I can see at the moment over the US, there's 5 here, I've got 2 here. So again, I've already got an insight of where my drone ops are planning to do their missions.
So this is just let me just pull you back there. So now I'm an operator. We're looking at this like I'm an operator, and that's all my boys out in the field.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what we're able to do, utilising the app that we have available, let's say you're the UAS compliance officer or safety manager for a large organisation. When the guys are out in the field using the app, as soon as they've completed their pre-flight checks, the system notifies our command centre that a flight is about to occur, and then the pin on the screen will change from amber to red. So we've now got an aircraft potentially flying live at that location. Until hardware develops and technology moves forward, we would like to bring in live telemetry streaming into the system. But obviously, again, with different hardware manufacturers using different systems and no one having a set standard, it's quite difficult to do at the moment. But it's something we're working towards with a couple of manufacturers to do proof of concepts. And we think hopefully within the next 6 to 12 months, we'll be able to start doing that with some of the manufacturing partners we have on board. So yeah, I'll give you a quick overview of the system if that's okay, and then
no, carry on. Yes, and I should have said not just boys in the field; the girls could be in the field as well. Sorry, the girls are watching. Yes,
no, that's very true. So I'll pick the UK as an example. So I'll just come into London, let's say. So before we can even kind of go and plan a mission, it would be nice to know what the airspace is like around where we want to fly, because the last thing you want to do is pick a location and then realise that you can't fly there because there's restricted airspaces. So our data feed for our airspace data comes from the Altitude Angel service. We did utilise another provider previously, which was free.
Let me guess, one of them was more accurate than the other.
Yes, it was. That's what I'm going to say on that.
Oh, really? Gosh.
Some of the clients that we have utilising our system aren't just flying at 400 feet. We have some clients that are operating fixed-wing aircrafts and that have permissions at 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, etc. So we need to provide kind of reassurance more than anything that the data that we have in this system is as accurate as it can be. Obviously, there's no guarantees with airspace data. NATs don't provide guarantees with the airspace data as it comes from them. But we have to at least be offering the best we can. So we partnered with Altitude Angel. They've got a fantastic quality check process that they go through. And the support that we've had from them once we came on board and helping developing and vice versa, we've pushed back ideas to them, and the relationship just seems to work really well.
Just for my own curiosity now, because I've flown that area an awful lot to the north of London, and I recognise some of that airspace there. But I'd like to know what that yellow airspace is in sort of the Hemel Hempstead area up to the keep going north, come left. That's Stansted. Yes, that one there. What's that?
So I've got a feeling that's going to be. Let me just turn off some of the control areas. Turn off those. So there is ultralights flying, increase for drone operations. So
it's my friend's microlight field. I did wonder. I know exactly what that is. Excellent. Oh yeah, no, that works then. Yeah, that works.
So again, just touching on some of the Altitude Angel stuff. What we noticed recently with a lot of the incidents kind of going on in London, you know, there were lots of restricted airspaces going up, and we were monitoring that within our system, and we could see the airspace obviously adapting and changing in real time, and that was really great to see. And again, it just supports.
Sadly, yes. Sadly, are the heli routes on that? Do Altitude Angel show the heli routes down the centre of London?
We don't have the heli routes, but what we do have is the heli stations. So if I turn off these, as we come into London, there's the London ATZ, and if I come in even further, I think it's.
So I'll give them. Yeah, I'll give you some. They need to put the heli routes on there, I think. But there you go.
Yeah, I believe. Let me just check. I believe the heli station does appear. Maybe I'm too far down.
Are you talking about Battersea? You must come left. Come west.
There we go. So there's the London Heliport.
Yeah.
Now, at the moment, when we view it at this view, we don't see any of the ATC contact details. But when you actually go into plan your mission, the ATC contact details pull through. So you can have direct contact with the ATC, and the numbers are stored against the mission. So I'll just turn on all the airspace data back on, apart from the controlled areas, just because it makes it a little bit more clearer. And let's pick somewhere I want to get some good low towns, but not necessarily lots of hazards. Let's pick in here. And again, actually, that's just something.
Yes, yeah.
If I just turn these off, when we were talking earlier about the number of UAS ops now coming up in London, that's a UAS op, that's a UAS op, that's a UAS op. There's quite a lot of flying going on in London now, and people seem to have the misconception that you can't fly drones in London. But with the right planning, the right safety cases, and the right equipment, it's surprising actually what you can achieve.
Now, I suppose that brings up a question, because most of our viewers are actually in America. And I'm sorry if I'm dragging you around into different topics here, but it's just coming to my mind. America's just rolling out these grids for city flying and stuff like that. Are you planning? Do you service American service providers in cities? Is that part of your future?
Yeah, so the airspace data that we've got for this system is global. So we cover the US. We're just bringing in a data set for South Africa now. I think we have about 70 to 80% global coverage.
Yeah, I can help you with that data set for South Africa, and they yeah. But perhaps the other provider that you are mentioning, it's very, very wrong. That's South African data, and just wrong. It's very, very wrong. But anyway, I digress.
That's okay. So if we go to plan a mission, so I can pick an area on the map. I get a little mission plan appear, as it might be, and it allows me to essentially create a container, a project for my flights, or I can create a new one. So let's create UAS News, and we'll put this as a demo flight. Now, it's quite important for us to select the date and time of our mission, because for the first mission that we plan, it will pull in the weather system for. Now, at the moment, we have this, what they call tower weather. So it simulates the feed that the ATC tower would get locally, and it updates every hour and a half, I believe. Within our development plan, we actually do, are hoping to be able to bring in a 7-day forecast.
So are you showing weather data when you said tower, they're like in an air traffic format, or is it a plain English format?
Plain English.
Okay.
Makes it easier for me to understand. So if we just give this first mission a title, so we'll call this aerial capture, and we'll put film sites of London. Save and close. What the system's now going to do, it's going to bring up a mission template for me. So here we can see the title I've given it. If this was a particular job, maybe with a specific payload sensor, you could specify the max altitude to the pilot you wanted him to operate at. So, for example, if you're flying with a Sony A6000 doing a land survey, and you know the optimum height for you to be at is 80 meters, then obviously then you can specify that within the mission itself. So the next
and then again, just to clarify this for me, this could be one of two people doing this now, either the pilot setting up for something he's going to do, or his operations manager tasking him.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have roles set up within the system with various permissions to what they can access and what they can create and what they can't, etc. But obviously every organization is structured slightly differently. It tends to be that if an organization wants to set up drone operations, the first pilot that they recruit, that's it, he's head of drone ops, or it gets passed off to some poor health and safety guy that's no experience with drone operations, and is all of a sudden told, you need to manage this.
Yes.
We cater for all organizational structures. Okay, so the next thing we need to do now is plan our flight area. You know, so we've put a pin obviously on the map to say we want to fly near here, but we actually need to define a boundary. So what we can do is, using the drawing tools, we can specify an area that we want to fly. So what I can do is just click hide all for the moment, and I'm going to pick just north of here. Let's say I need to survey these gas holders, as we can see on the map. So I've defined my area. I click save, and immediately it's telling me that overall advisory status is danger, and we'll see why in a moment. It's bringing in the weather forecasted information at this moment in time and for the next hour and a half. And it's also advising me of the ground assets and infrastructure that potentially going to cause me some issues.
Now, is this not the beauty of Altitude Angel and their database? Because their database isn't just airspace; it's stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've just turned on all the ground hazards that we can see around where I'm going to be operating now. And let's, in fact, what we'll do is, if I...
So was that a really lucky strike where you hit that on the map, or did you know exactly where you're going to do that? So you'd show me that.
No, not at all. No, it was a really...
So it's a very lucky strike. That's very, you demonstrated the advantage of Altitude Angel very nicely there.
Yeah. It's one of those, again, it's with the data sets that they have available with the services they provide. Initially, when we began talking with them, you know, we weren't even thinking about ground hazards at that point in time, because we were thinking flight planning from a flight perspective. We do a pre-flight survey on site anyway, so we'd be aware of them. But the fact that now we can pre-warn even before you've done your pre-flight survey, it just enhances the operation from a safety point of view, I think. So if we... Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, am I right in thinking they've got things like schools and stuff like that? Because here in South Africa, all police stations, all hospitals, all medical facilities are voids as well. So they would have to go on there in the real world of things, along with a lot of other stuff. You're not allowed to actually put up power lines on a map here because it's critical infrastructure. So you won't find them on a map here. Okay. So there's lots of local nuances and things like that.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I mean, if we looked at it, if I was doing my typical mission planning now without a system like this, it would be Google Maps. We all go into Google Maps and we look and identify. Yes. But if I'm looking at Google Maps as it is now on this screen, let's say, I couldn't identify where a hospital was, or maybe there could be some data protection issues because there's a school nearby. You know, I couldn't identify those. But now, at the flick of a switch, show me all the infrastructure, which I can filter.
Without sounding like I want to blow their trumpet too hard for them, I think they are the only airspace or situational awareness group out there offering data down to that sort of granular level. I don't think anybody else in the world's doing that. So fair play to Altitude Angel. I'm not sponsored by them, honest.
And neither am I, can I just say. But I think it just helps emphasise the importance about having the right data provider when choosing a system like this. You know, whether it's our system or another partner that they're working with. You know, we have to pay a fee to utilise the airspace data and that we get, but we know the value that it adds to the client, you know, and the reassurance that it gives them that the data is accurate. So what we can do now is, now we've planned our flight area, and obviously we can see the hazards. Let's begin looking at the airspace data. So I can begin turning on the airspace data that we saw earlier. So let's just turn off that one, and we'll turn that one on, and that one on, and that one. And just make it a bit clearer. So if I just zoom out and let's just look at the bigger picture, you see exactly where I'm flying. I can now zoom in and go, okay, so give me the details for the London CTR. So now I've got the floor and ceiling limits for the airspace itself. I can see the airspace category, so it's Class D. If I come out and if I just turn off the Class D and zoom out slightly, down here we've got a NOTAM that's come up, firework display happening. It's given me all the details of the operation of when it's going to occur. It's even given me the contact details for the people that are managing the display. And where that becomes really useful within this system is when you get NOTAMs from other UAS operators, because we now have the ability to start looking at deconfliction, let's say at a basic level, that what is your UAS that you're operating? Is it doing 5.8 video? Is there going to be some bleed crossover? Is it another DJI system? So again, the contact details are there within the NOTAM information. I just think it's, I just wish I had this when I was out operating all day, every day, because. Yeah.
And to be clear though, you could look at this NOTAM, you could find this NOTAM information online the old-fashioned way, as you said. You don't have to do that. Years ago I used to have to pull the things off teleprinters and write them out and plot them all out and all that sort of thing. And gosh, yeah, life would be I bet they hardly turn up to work these days. I bet they hardly turn up.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, again, the data's freely out there, you know, and you can pull it off Eurocontrol, etc., and Sky Demon Light, etc., has it also. Sky Demon Light's probably the easiest interface to try and find NOTAMs on and utilize. But the nice thing again with the Altitude Angel system, depending on your operating limits, everything is pre-filtered for UAS operations. I believe it's everything below 400 feet or up to 400 feet. So it filters out the NOTAMs that are focused on their manned aviation, because obviously it's not relevant to our drone operations. And again, it declutters and just makes it a bit more simpler. So now we've specified our flight area. It's now listed the advisories, and we'll touch on those in a moment when we go through the app as the pilot on site, because the pilot is required to mitigate against those as risks. So again, we're putting the ownership now of the pilot being aware of the advisories that have been shown to him, and how is he going to mitigate them? Mitigate against those. But we'll go through that in a moment. So the next thing to do is assign a crew. So let's stick me as the pilot. And the next thing we'll do is we can add ground crew. So if I wanted a spotter or a payload operator, we can add those to the system. And what's important with regards to these is when we upload the flight log data after the flight, the flying hours gets assigned to the pilot under his pilot currency, but we also assign it to the spotter under a spotter currency, as it might be. So we start to build up the currencies across not just the pilot itself, but the roles of the individuals, because then it gives organizations the ability to go, who is my most experienced payload operator? Who's got the most flying hours? In the development cycle that we have, and this would probably be a good idea for maybe a take two in a couple of months' time, where we can show you the level we're going to with pilot currency down to the point of identifying waypoint flying styles, etc., and everything else.
I was going to say, are you then going to start pulling apart how the pilot actually operates and what his actions, inactions or reactions have been like in his operational flight time? I suppose this is where your standardized aircraft logging would help, because you could then see it in every aircraft type, see his style of flying.
Absolutely. So what we plan to do is begin adding metadata to each mission. So the pilot will specify if it's congested area, if it's a waypoint flight, etc. So when the flight log's uploaded post-flight, it says, okay, he's got 15 hours waypoint flying and 12 hours in congested areas. Organizations can set their limits to say, is that enough to be doing that kind of flying in that environment, muscle memory, etc., and everything else. But then also we can start looking at, is he using the return to home function too often? Because he's lazy, and he's consequences that if he does that, the aircraft doesn't have collision avoidance on the rear of it, and it could end up in a tree.
Yes, that's right.
It's happening. There are organisations that have got pilots, you know, that are out in the field and they're going, oh, it just crashed into a tree. Now you begin looking at the flight log data, you can see exactly the processes of what that flight went through, let's say, and how it led to it being in the tree.
Well, because the tree, we all know how that happens. It's because trees jump up and catch UAS. That's how that happens. We all know that.
Yeah,
there's no requirement to have any tools to find that. Is there? I'm a little bit out of the loop with what happens in the UK. Are there flight time limitations for UAS operators? Are you under those provisions?
Well, we have to have recorded. I believe it's somewhere between 2 and 3 hours flying a month to stay current, which in my opinion is quite low. But with the operational safety cases, the pilots, when they present their operational safety cases, the CA will say to them, you know, how many hours flying do you expect to do in 90 days in those kind of environments? So let's say they put 30 hours, let's say. If they don't fly or reach that 30 hours consistently over those 90 days, that pilot needs to go through retraining within their organization or buddy up with another pilot that's doing that flight to keep his currency up. And again, it goes back to our currency module that we're developing to help support that kind of infrastructure. Yeah,
that's very much the manned aviation sort of model that I'm used to. So yes, obviously some of that has come into play, and I think 2 hours a month that would be more than's required from manned aviation. That's a lot of 6-minute flights, isn't it? If you're back in the day, but I suppose everyone's doing 20-minute flights. There's still quite a few flights a month for some people, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, I'm moving you around all over the place. Leading on to the next part.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So I've selected a system. So I've selected DJI Inspire 1, and it's automatically pulled through my pre-flight checklists and my post-flight checklists. So when you set the system up, again, completely drone agnostic, your checklists can be whatever you want them to be. All you have to state is if it's mission related or if it's aircraft related. So mission related would be pre-site survey, turn up, designate landing area, designate emergency landing area, etc., etc. Aircraft related, obviously check motors, check props, is the camera attached correctly, whatever you want them to be. I've got a few samples on here. So for pre-flight survey check, takeoff area, emergency landing area. Inspire 1, at the launch site itself, you know, checking for obstacles, etc. And then pre-flight for the Inspire 1, you know, check each leg for cracks and security, etc. Lifting mechanisms okay and it's clear to operate. These checks can be whatever you want them to be, whatever there is in your operations manual. You can implement them if there's specific organizational safety workflows that you have to go through. In addition to your normal operations, you can implement those. And these will then sync with the pilot's app. So when the pilot is on site and he's working through those checklists, they update and notify in real time. And we'll touch on that in a moment. So we've now assigned our aircraft and the checklists have now come through. So what we'll do now is if we go back to the map view, and I'm going to change the filters on the screen to show live and pre-flight what it's doing. And we now go down into London. Well, there's our aerial capture mission there on the orange pin. Just to make it a little clearer, we'll turn off the airspace. Okay, and now I'm going to just bring another window into view, which is going to be streamed from my iPhone. So I've got my iPhone connected here. Let's just move that across. There's our mission sitting on the screen there. So this is my pilot app. It shows me when I log in all the missions that I've necessarily completed. You can filter these out. It can show also the ones that are currently assigned to me, and any that are planned for the future. So if I scroll down, and I will see if I update, just change the status to pre-flight. There we go. We're just going to synchronize that now. There we go. Aerial capture. So that's the mission we've just planned. On the satellite view, just to zoom in. There's the gas containers that we're obviously going to fly over. Now, what you see on the screen now, it tells me the status of my mission. So it's in its pre-flight stage. I can see my checklists are red. So that must mean something. My advisories are red. And it tells me the crew makeup, tells me which aircraft I'm flying. And if I click review mission, it tells me I'm not permitted to fly. I must carry out my checklists. So as the pilot on site, I'm now going to be working through my checklists. And again, these are synchronized exactly with what's on the system. So the nice feature about this from a compliance point of view is if you were to change your company workflow process, you could update it on the server-based system and it would filter throughout everyone's missions that are using that particular aircraft with those pre-flight checks. Maybe DJI brings in a function or a change on the workflow before pre-flight takeoff. You could update it on the system and it would filter through to everyone using the system.
And would you update that in the format of a gotcha, you didn't read the book, or do you have the power to put a notice to your pilots to say, oh dear all, this has changed, this is what you got to do now, are you down with that? Tick yes, good. Or contact the office for further information. Otherwise it's a bit of a gotcha, isn't it? I worked for a bloke who wrote down every mistake we ever made. I mean, he and I, as we flew, and then when anyone new came along, we had this huge manual, and if anyone made the same mistakes as we did, they were in deep trouble. So that's why that immediately rang alarm bells with him. I can see my chief pilot rolling out trouble for people. Anyway, sorry, I'm digressing. Sorry.
We do have a notification system in development at the moment, which notifies compliance managers of incidences, etc. But I think, yeah, once we update the workflow or the checklists, the pilot should be notified, because, again, the last thing you want to do is turn up on site and go, oh, everything's changed. But
I presume you'd jump in your car before you went off and did the job. You'd be having your cup of coffee and just looking at the app to review, well, this is what I'm going off downtown to do. So best I see. So I guess you could be up to speed before you've even left home, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done my pre-flight checklists. They've now gone from red to grey. I've got 2 outstanding, and then my post-flights. So that's absolutely fine. My advisories are still red. So what we do now is we can go into the advisories, and as the pilot, I am required to mitigate against this risk. So I can put here permission granted for flight, click save, and on the gas holders, I can put here carrying out survey permission granted. So that. We'll do the same on the other one as well. I'll just put permission granted. Now, these statements I'm putting in synchronize to the server and are recorded against the mission, and they cannot be changed. Once they're entered within the system, it's locked in. So if there was ever any point of doubt in the future, let's say there was an incident, and you go, well, how did you mitigate against that risk? How did you manage that when you were on site? You can always refer back to what the pilot had entered.
I've been trying to see. Sorry, I'm just going to stop you, and just in case these people are still watching, we've had a couple of questions. So can I just pause, hold, stop what you're doing? Jeffrey and Yaga is asking, is this going to integrate with UTM functionality? And I think we've covered that. It is really, isn't it? Or we can talk about that in a minute. I haven't spoken about that, have we yet?
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can.
UTMs. We'll bring that up in a minute. And then helicopter routes, yeah, I think they should go on there as well, above and beyond, because I've flown the ones in London. And then Scott McClintock. So, is this compatible with the new FAA grid maps? And I think it will be, because the guys from Altitude Angels are good like that, and they will have that in there, I'm sure.
Yeah,
but maybe you know better.
We've actually just received, I think it was 2 weeks ago, the sensitive site data came into our system, so the prisons, etc., are now appearing within the system. And there's a development update coming, hopefully in the next 6 weeks, where we'll be able to process the FAA waivers through CQNet. So because you're already planning your missions, we know where you're flying, we know what aircraft you're using, we know who you are as a pilot. We will be able to submit them through the Altitude Angel system, which will then pass the waiver on to the FAA. So it's still in development at the moment, but we're hoping it'll be available soon.
Will that SuperDuper speed up the process? Because that's a big point of pain over there at the moment.
Yeah, at the moment it's something like 90 days. I know Air Maps are posted today, actually, that they're already utilising the system and are processing data through that. And it's just a matter of time, I think, for everyone else begins doing that process, because it can only help alleviate some of the pain the FAA must be going through at the moment with regards to UAS ops over there.
Well, yeah, you don't need to, all the details of the person, don't you? Because it's being pulled off your database. There's no need to check them every time and all that sort of thing. And you've even got a record of what they've done, I suppose, in the past as well, just how trustworthy they are. Sorry, David, I stopped you mid flow there, but I'm just playing around with trying to find the comments, because when we do our normal chats, we never find them. Well, I'm terrified I'm going to switch the live streaming off when I'm looking at the comments. So it's the Duffer Dad way of doing it. So I apologise. Please carry on.
Okay, so we've done our pre-flight checks. We've mitigated the risk against our advisories. So now, as a pilot, if I click review mission, it's going to tell me that I'm ready to fly. So I've obviously done my pre-flight checks, and my aircraft is set up in front of me, essentially ready to go. So I can click OK. The pin now on the map on the screen is now changed to red. So it's now indicating to my safety management team, whoever back in the office, that David's about to fly a drone in the middle of London. So they're now got this situational awareness, where is with organisations at the moment, they don't know what time of day their team could be flying. They don't know if it's mission critical, time critical, that they must get this done before X, Y, and Z on that day. Yes, it is a little bit Big Brother, let's say, but it just enables organisations to have that reassurance within, their drone ops. So the drone's in the air now, and it's doing its thing, and it's doing its flight, and now it's landed. So how do we tell the office that the drone's on the ground? Well, we complete our post-flight checks. So the post-flight checks we work through, I'll just go through these quickly. And yes, I have had the question, what's to stop operators just going tick, 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 ticking through them? To be honest with you, it's no different if they were doing their manual checks with a paper and pen. They could sit there and tick, 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 and tick through them. We have thought about putting comment boxes in there, something along those lines. But I come from an IT background, and for me, and my experience, it's all about how the system is presented and implemented into an organisation and to the teams. For them to have an understanding of why it's critical, they must follow the processes and the procedures.
Do you measure when the pre-flight checks were completed? Then there should be an amount of time for the flight to happen, and then the post-flight checks, and then you can surely then monitor someone. Then, have they flown for an hour, or have they flown for half an hour, from whatever they're claiming? I mean, again, this brings us all the way back around to, if there was standard logging from the aircraft, that the aircraft would tell you exactly how long it had flown for. But do you measure that as well?
That's something we're looking at the moment. We understand, obviously, that a pilot might complete his pre-flight checks, but then all of a sudden a weather system could come in, or there could be an aircraft incursion and he could be grounded. So we're trying to come up with a workflow that maybe there's a pause button that the pilot can press, essentially, to say, well, I've done my pre-flight checks, but actually I'm not going to launch just yet. And we're still trying to kind of gauge what that window time could be, whether it's an hour or a couple of hours. But I think that's a sensible approach, because again, those that have done drone ops know that you could turn up in the morning, it can be absolutely lovely. You get your aircraft out, you get it all set up, and all of a sudden, here comes the rain. Welcome to England, and we fight in the typical British weather. So the aircraft goes back into the back of the van with it all being ready to go. So I think, there will be a development where we can essentially hit a pause button, as it might be.
Did I miss it somewhere here? Can we see things like a weather radar coming across the screen whilst we're sat there, both at the office and out on the field?
No, you can't at the moment, but it is something that I would like to bring into the system. We raised it with our provider, Altitude Angel, and it's something that they're going to look into for us. Alternatively, the IBM system is pretty impressive, the Weather Channel system, and they do have an API that is available, so we could potentially kind of hang off the back of that as well. Again, it's something I think that we do need to bring into the system to enable pilots to kind of judge, let's say, the availability of time on the day as well. Am I going to get my 3 or 4 flights in that I need to because the weather system's moving at such a rate of knots, or it's moving in this direction? It's definitely on the development roadmap at some point.
Yeah, it'd be really cool, wouldn't it, if it flagged up, actually, Trev, you shouldn't do that one. Go and do that one because the weather's gonna clobber you for that. Don't waste the journey. That would be very cool, wouldn't it?
And I think the future plans with CQNet and some of the functions and automation that we've got going, especially with the waypoint planning side of things, and we're talking again. This is in the future when BV loss becomes more available. But the fact that you could inform an aircraft to move around a weather system, let's say, in real time, as opposed to having to fly straight through it because you've told it to fly a straight line, that's kind of where we would like to see CQNet maybe in the next 12 to 24 months. With some
I think the aircraft will do that for themselves, won't they? I think it'll end up very soon that the aircraft will say, "Oh, by the way, I'm having to turn left because of." And it'll tell you, and then of course you'll be able to pull in all that airspace information and then deconflict with whatever else might be on the route that it thinks it's off on. No, it's exciting times, really, and the technology is all here, and available. It's just sort of pulling it all together, isn't it? And of course, it's all there where you are in the First World. There's probably LTE networks absolutely everywhere in the UK and stuff like that. But hop on the aeroplane, come down and see me in South Africa. We've got very limited cell phone coverage and stuff like that. How's it start working when, let's see, I don't know, you could be up on a mountainside in Wales or something like that. How does all this work then when your man is coverage?
Yeah, so we can run an offline mode within the app itself. So it won't need a date connection. All your missions are cached from your kind of last sync. So we would expect the guy when he leaves the office to, update his phone, synchronize, grab his latest mission list, jump up the mountain. It will detect that there's no data connection available, but you can still go through and action all his missions, his pre-flight checks. Obviously, we don't get the real-time notifications. We don't have sat phones yet, sadly. But all that data is then cached, and as soon as the data connection is available, it will synchronize and update with the command center on the server side of things.
And just, sorry, keep going. I've got a couple of questions, but keep going. Lead me by the hand. Keep leading.
Okay. So now we've landed. The pins changed. Now we've completed our post-flight checks. The pins now changed to blue, so the aircraft is on the ground and in its post-flight stage. So if we were just doing that one single flight, when the pilot's back in the office, he can then come back into the system. He will locate the mission that he's just completed. And just to make this a bit more viewable, we can get rid of the app now. He uploads his flight log. So I'm going to grab a Inspire flight log that I've got on here. We do have the ability to enable the manual entry of log data, because obviously we are aware that you can get corrupted flight logs. There may be a system where we can't pass out, for whatever reason, the flight log data. It needs to be entered manually. But we can take a raw DJI flight log file. I can upload it to the system.
And you pull that's been pulled from the card by the end user, or do you put the card somewhere and it does it automatically, or how's that arrived in the system?
So essentially, we've just pulled it directly off the phone device. We did try with the iOS app to be able to pull it in from the DJI app folder itself, but with it being an iOS closed system, it isn't so easy to do. We spoke with DJI about the potential for synchronizing DJI accounts, but there is no kind of real approval process at the moment with DJI on how you go about doing that. With their
industry standard, we need an industry standard for logging. I keep ranting it. We need an industry standard that everyone has to play with.
No, absolutely, I absolutely agree. And so at the moment, it's a manual process. At the moment, we're uploading one log file against each mission. So obviously, that can be, and I understand it could be a bit tedious if you've done 20 flights, let's say, in that day from a survey. So we're now writing an algorithm that will allow us to say, right, this is when the pre-flight checks were completed.
I was just going to ask if you had some sort of sanity check to make sure that it was the correct log file against the, okay.
Start time from the flight. So now you can just bulk upload 20, 30 flight logs, and it will just go mission, flight log, mission, flight log. It's not there yet, but it's something we're working towards. But it's something, we soon realise that once you've got other systems as well, for example, where they don't have fancy apps for recording it and it is taken directly off the aircraft, the one-by-one approach, can only be managed for so long, let's say. But we've passed the DJI log here, as you can see, so I can see the flight duration, the max altitude the aircraft was flown at, the max distance from the point of takeoff, the total distance flown, and the max speed. It's obviously just a short flight with the Inspire. I've also got battery voltage information, start and end, and by cell. And I've got all
those. Sorry to stop, David. Do the batteries identify themselves as being battery number 47, battery number 23 in that data?
Yeah, so on the DJI logs, and I hate to say this, but the DJI logs actually, once fully passed out, are pretty impressive. I can get payload serial numbers. I can get lens serial numbers that you've used on the cameras. I get battery serial numbers. Anything with a smart battery, with a log, with a decent log, we can, pull that into the system and say, actually, you said on this mission you're going to use this battery, and you put this battery in, and that doesn't match what's on the log file.
Yes. Yes.
And that's something we've got in our process in the dev system that I can show you in a moment.
And if and so have DJI kept that logging standard the same from all through the range, or does it change with each aircraft?
It changes with each aircraft on each firmware update for each aircraft.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah. So we have to keep on top of it. As soon as we see a firmware release that's comes out, obviously, it can be expected. DJI don't necessarily say every 3 months we will do an update. With DJI, it's pretty random. There's no real structure to it. Where we have a structured kind of development release schedule. But if a customer uploads, the latest firmware log file, let's say, and the system cannot pass it for whatever reason, the system still holds the log file. The dev team are notified. They will then review the passed out code, restructure, and we can usually provide a resolution within about 24 to 48 hours. So it's quite quick. It could be better, but I think with the way the manufacturers are at the moment, with different structures and again not following a standard, as you said, there's only so much we can achieve at the moment.
Yeah, I didn't realise they changed the way the log files work quite so frequently. That is a bit of a gotcha for all you people developing apps out there. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But some of the nice things now, with regards to what we can pull. This one's a simple one. It's just telling us about the landing gear raising and the landing gear being raised and lowering. But on some of the missions, we can see where pilots have tried to use, let's say, point of interest feature, and it said, you're not at the right altitude, or you're not at the right distance for this to take place. So we can start identifying, where retraining is required, let's say, on certain features. It records transmission loss, video loss of transmission from the handset, every imaginable fear you would have with your system. If the log file records it, we can pull it out and identify it. This helps then with the maintenance regime and structures that you can have in place, alerting your staff of potential issues with aircraft. And as I mentioned earlier, overuse of features that necessarily shouldn't be used for what they're used for. Yeah, it's quite impressive what we can achieve from some of the flight log data.
Are you finding you're answering or speaking to problems that you never dreamt of when you started out down certain paths? So you're discovering things like, oh, that'd be a good feature. Is that happening a lot to you as you're developing this?
I think that happens to me probably twice a week, because you kind of take it to one step and then you discover another one, and you're like, okay, well, that could provide data for this area, and it can provide data for this area. And that's kind of, in a way, how the pilot currency came about, because we started logging data against the pilots and saying, okay, well, here's your pilot logbook, here's the hours you've flown, but then actually, show me the hours per weight category, show me the hours per fixed wing multi-rotor, because then we can get to a point of where, when you're doing your mission planning, depending on the parameters the organization sets, that pilot might not have done enough hours for that flight.
Yeah. That's a mission for Davey and Fred. John and Frank can't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we would hope with the system and the operators using it and organizations using it that we could actually alert them prior to that happening. And again, it just builds for a safer kind of organization, UAS operation all round, having this kind of big data now available to them. Because, I mean, let's be honest, how many operators pull out their log files and check the log file data? I think maybe with the likes of healthy drones coming about, etc., and everything else, that more operators doing it more frequently than what they should or what they do. But I still think that there are some commercial operators out there that actually probably have never looked at the log file in their life. They go, the DJI app records it. It's all I need.
Well, there's our man that's recorded 8,000 hours of UAS time with DJI equipment in 4 years. But anyway,
that's very true. I just wanted to, I'll just touch on. So we use the Inspire for that flight. So this kind of gives me a summary now under the aircraft kind of assets kind of thing that we have set up within the system. So I can see a full history now of the aircraft. So I can see that the flight duration for the aircraft, so its flying hours, with all the flight logs accumulated, are now nearly up to 3 hours. I can see the max altitude that it's flown. It's been 100 meters. So if it had breached the 100-meter mark, again, with the parameters set by the organization, you can start setting flags if you've got operators breaching, altitude limits, the max distance from the point of takeoff. But another thing that's really important with the flight log data is it drives the maintenance system. So within the system, you can plan your maintenance regimes, 10 hours, 20, 40, let's say. And as you begin adding the flight logs, they accumulate, and the system tells you, depending on your maintenance plan, what maintenance needs to take place.
Sorry, I'm butting in. Let's just say I'm a very wealthy person. I just bought myself 10 Inspires and I want your app. Do you come with and I haven't got a clue. I'm just wealthy. I haven't got a clue about any of this. Would you come up with a suggested maintenance regime for me? Is it something that I would have to work out? Is this something you could offer me?
So we, where we can, we take the manufacturer's recommendations and we have them as an option for an organization when they're set up to be used. There are some operators that aren't interested in maintenance. There are some operators that absolutely are kind of OCD with maintenance to an extent, let's say, because they have their OSCs, they've got to show that they're supporting the safe operation of their aircraft. And with the maintenance activities, you can set your own plans, or you can use a manufacturer default if there is one available. Within the organization at Consortiq, with the various drone operators that we have and the instructors that we have, we utilize that experience. I'll take an example, DJI S1000. When they first put out the first one, The motor rubber mounts, replace them after 40 hours. I replaced mine after 10. You know, and it's that experience and knowledge that we can draw on and adjust and tailor the maintenance plan to say, experience tells us that you're not going to reach 30 hours on that set, let's say. You need to reduce that. So we offer that as well, and that's something that we can set up. But the other nice feature that we have is it tells you the countdown to your next maintenance. Because the last thing you do is go and set to, let's say, you're based in the UK and now you're off to France for 2 weeks flying, and the hours start ramping up with your aircraft. And all of a sudden, you've got critical maintenance that you have to carry out, and you're in the middle of a field. You know, you can't do that. So we're able to give a bit more insight, a bit forward thinking and planning.
So can you plan multiple missions in France, for instance? Let's go and do this. Let's go and do this field trip to France. That'd be very nice. Let's see if we can make it work. But can you flight plan multiples? What I'm trying to say is, when you put an aircraft in and you've got multiple missions planned, would it tell you that it has enough hours to complete the tasks you expect it to undertake whilst away?
Not at the moment, but that is a feature we have in the DED system, and we're trying to make it as simple as we can, an amber, a red and a green light. So if it's not classed as critical maintenance and you think that the flights would be okay to continue doing, then yes, you can carry on and do those missions. But I'm glad you actually touched on about the multiple missions, because when I showed you earlier, we were looking at creating the single mission. Where's the project? Let me have a look. Let's see what here. What we can do is plan one mission, and then we can duplicate it over a given time set. So it creates a template essentially for us. So if I just do duplicate, I'm going to specify this for tomorrow, just to make things nice and easy, and we're going to do it for. We'll call this mission one, save and close. It's going to take me into the mission. I can go through, I can plan my flight area, because typically when we do surveys for, let's say, a golf course or whatever it might be, most cases are working in the same area. The airspace probably within the area isn't going to change too much, given the fact that we're probably operating in a 1 mile by 1 mile box, let's say. So if I just take that, I don't think I've fully closed the loop. Okay, there we go. Now, if I turn on here, we can see the airspace for France. Good. And now what I can do is, if I go back to the mission itself, I can scroll down and I can select a crew. So let's just add me for an example, and I can select an aircraft. I can now go back up, and we have a copy function.
Right.
Yeah, copy the mission. Okay,
just
so
change the date.
Yeah, so what we're doing at the moment, we can enable the total number of copies. So let's say 10. Well, what's your typical flying time? If it's 15 minutes, okay, well, let's allow for changing of batteries and pre-flight checks. Let's say it's 25. And I can then specify, well, the pilot's already specified. Let's just change the flying time, 10:01. Save and close. The mission's now going to go off. You can see now it's duplicated my missions for the day. So typically, again, if I was doing a risk assessment or a method statement and that I had to present my flight plans for that day, it takes some time to prepare. That's just taken me 90 seconds. To create all those missions with the crew assigned, etc. So again, it's another nice feature, and I'm glad you mentioned about the duplication. It's something we still have as a work in progress. There's still some fine tuning that we'd like to do to it. But again, coming back to the bulk uploading of flight logs with that algorithm, you know, if we could plan those in 90 seconds and then upload the flight logs in 90 seconds, that's a huge time saving from a
Well, unfortunately, at the end of the day, what you're talking about here is the entirely not sexy part of this whole industry, which is diminishing the yeah, reducing the paperwork, isn't it? It's all the bits nobody actually wants to do or talk to any. You don't go down to the pub and say, "Oh, I planned some lovely missions today." I'll tell you what, that's not the bit that people talk about. So this is the very dull but very necessary part of running an efficient UAS business.
And that's the thing. And pilots literally, if we're honest, is just want to go out and fly.
Yeah,
that's what they enjoy doing. It gets your adrenaline going when you're doing a really cool inspection or you're doing a really nice aerial shot for a media company, let's say. The last thing you want to be doing is filling out paperwork, but it's a necessary thing for us to do, and we still do it. But now, hopefully, with CQNet, we have an easier way.
And what's are we moving towards what the flight reports look like there afterwards? What's left in the, I guess, a virtual filing cabinet? I don't suppose any of it ever gets printed, or does it have to get printed for the CAA?
So we have at the moment within our system some basic reports that can be run. We have a customizing report system in development at the moment, but essentially a pilot can go in, or an organizational administrator can go in, and they can look at the reports, the template that we have here. Let's specify myself. I can display a quick overview, which shows me the max distance I've ever operated, as you can just see from that mission we threw up earlier. Or I can look at a detailed summary. So here, on this flight, you can see that I actually reported an incident of unusual behavior with my DJI Inspire. You can see the messages that might have related to that log flight. The total number of missions, the total number of messages that I might have been seeing. So, yeah, we have some basic reporting in place at the moment. We know it could be a lot more in depth, and that's what we're working to achieve, to be able to give organisations, the ability to run their own compliance reports, etc., against their own defined parameters. But it's good actually we touch on compliance, because one of the things I wanted to show you was something we've got in the dev system. So this isn't in the live system that I just showed you, but this is in our dev system that we're working on. And again, flight log data. This is off a Phantom 3. It's a mission that was flown. So the blue box is the mission defined area that we set when we plan our mission. Now from the flight log data, we can now overlay the actual flight that was flown. So again, from a compliance point of view, are your pilots flying within the boundaries that they've kind of defined and set? We now have some telemetry data to view, so we can see the path, the altitude of the aircraft, what it flew, the speed, the battery voltages in a pretty graph view as it might be. We can also view the messages. On this particular one, the landing gear went up and down a lot. I'm not sure why the pilot did that, but he obviously liked the landing gear going up and down. Take it one step further, we can have a 3D flight playback. Now, excuse the aircraft that is used within this model, because for CCM and does not represent a Phantom 3. We are working on the models. But if I just change the speed of this, let's say to here, and click play, we can now, in real time, view the complete playback of that flight. So if there was ever a question about the aircraft flight within its boundaries, or if you wanted to investigate, let's say, why an aircraft crashed, we have the ability to turn on the 3D terrain mapping within the CCM model itself. The other ability we have as well is for it to be used for showing other pilots how surveys are conducted. So it could be used as a training tool. So if Tom, let's say, went and surveyed a field last week, and how did he do that? Well, look at the previous mission, and you can replay that back. So again, it's still in dev, but it's, again, another nice feature that we're looking to bring into the system, again, to really utilize that flight log data as much as we can, and enhance it as a product.
And I suppose ultimately you'd like your data coming back in real time to HQ, so you can watch that, because of course if the aircraft does crash in a big way and you destroy the SD card, you've lost that data, haven't you? So yeah, I suppose you'll be working towards that real-time tracking.
Yeah, I mean, ADSB I think is going to be one of the kind of stepping stones, let's say, to bringing in aircraft tracking abilities. I personally don't believe ADS-B on UAS is the answer for the future, because I think from a manned aviation perspective and the poor guys in the ATCs that are trying to manage the airspace, when you look at the number of drones that are on the market at the moment now, if they're all fitted with ADS-B, it would look like your radar got chickenpox. And I think it'd be very difficult to distinguish, what was what. But I think it's a stepping stone for maybe operators with enhanced permissions, the ones that want to do EV loss, BB loss, congested areas, or that are operating on airports and things, doing inspections. I think, yes, that's a great use for them. But I think there needs to be, again, another technology change within the next, 2 to 5 years, or even, maybe even sooner than that, depending on how the industries go. And again, it's about how that data is presented. And again, with CQNet, we have some trials coming up where we're hoping to be able to start bringing in ADS-B data within here. So as an organisation, you can begin to see that and view that in real time.
How are you going to? Maybe you can't tell me how you're going to do that, because I mean I can provide you with some ADS-B data. It wouldn't work in the middle of London because it's ADS-B data from Africa. Because getting that data is quite easy, really. It's really easy. Then, but placing it, you can place it on Mission Planner. Good old Mission Planner. You can plot your ADS-B stuff now. I've been able to for a couple of years. How would you get a feed? Is there a worldwide feed that one can buy in for this sort of thing?
There isn't, but we have several partners that we're working with that are able to provide us with various feeds that are, let's say, compared and matched to verified data that's kind of being presented, because as we know, ADS-B data can also be spoofed quite easily. And we are looking to not only use ADS-B data to warn pilots about aircraft potentially coming into the airspace where they're operating, but also to be able to give some sort of visual and awareness, because kind of the sense, detect and avoid is still, I think, a work in progress, and it hasn't been fully adopted by regulators. I mean, some of the regulators, are still so strict that, altitude limits of 200 feet, etc., and everything else, for them to start adopting the fact that drones can suddenly start avoiding fuller size aircraft would be quite a big leap. So I think there's some stages for us to work through.
It's not a big leap. It's not a big leap from a test ride jumping in on you there, but it's not a big leap from a technological standpoint, though, is it?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's been around years. ADS, as we discussed earlier. I think it's a mindset change, and then a deeper understanding about how software systems like CQNet, supported by the right hardware, in the right environment, can be really powerful. And I still think, there are some regulator, I can't even say it.
I know what you mean.
Regulators, that maybe haven't been exposed to it, or maybe are a little bit fearful of it, let's say. But I think, small steps.
But I think ADS-B can work. I don't think RPAS have to transmit their position or anything like that. If all manned aircraft were equipped with ADS-B and we could see them coming, we could get out of their way. And I reckon the unmanned aircraft world could roll that out in a year if they put their mind to it. It's not hard. But as you quite correctly said, the trouble with ADS-B is you can spoof it, and it's crazily easy to spoof. But then that's what happens when you use a technology which by 2020 will be knocking on, well, it will be 30 years old. So that's going to happen. That's what's going to happen when you use 30-year-old gear. And it speaks to really how long it takes manned aviation to roll out new technologies. I can't think of an example, but where was the unmanned aircraft world 30 years ago? Did even the Predator or Reaper even exist then? I don't really know.
I know. I'm aware of in the early days within World War II, I think it was, they were using model aircraft for target practice and things like that, and they were utilising them essentially as a dead drone, as they would say.
Well, I mean, this year is actually the 100th anniversary of the first RPAS flight. It happened in 1917 on Salisbury Plain. It was AT lows. Oh, God, it's a bit nerdy, isn't it? I shouldn't know these things. But anyway, it was. Yes, this is the 100th anniversary of the first unmanned aircraft flight. Not AT low. What was his name? It was low, so not AT. The AT was aerial target. There was something low.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, no, we're 100 years in, and we've not all been celebrating that, which I found a bit weird. But there we go.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but it's just touching on what you were talking about earlier, with regards to the UTM, while we're talking about ADSB. So again, with our partner Altitude Angel and the service that they provide, they have the Guardian UTM, as it's called, and that is integrated into the other UTMs that are being developed across Europe and across the globe. And over in Canada, there was a big meeting this week with all the UTM guys that are looking to facilitate the infrastructure globally, let's say, as it might be. And we're going to be one of the very first commercial enterprise products that is going to start feeding data into the UTM. So our pilots would have the option to declare or not declare flights. We have some sensitive organisations that might not want to declare flights using our system at the moment. So there's a reason for that. But for those that do feed into the UTM, we get data back. So we can then start telling you in real time, you've got hobbyists or you've got drone users nearby doing X, Y, and Z. And it just helps enhance that safety picture as an operator.
Well, that's all very well from the model aircraft operator, drone operator point of view, but how does the manned pilot get to see that information?
So some of that data is actually being filtered through to some, let's say at the moment, selected parties. So the air ambulance are currently taking a feed from the Altitude Angel system, because they're obviously operating at sometimes lower levels. And as they're coming in, I believe they've got some a feed into one of the applications that they use for their airspace and their navigation. The feed comes in from the Guardian UTM into their system, and it's able to notify them that, you know, drone flights have been planned at these locations where you're flying at the moment, just to be aware. And I think that's a great use of that information. You know, it's free.
I'm going to be, because it's Richard, isn't it, Altitude Angel? I'm going to be emailing him straight away. I want to talk to him about that. That is fantastic. I didn't know about that. I need to hear more about that. That's very cool. One of the benefits of, or one of the side benefits of setting up an ADSB receiving setup down here in my part of the world is an unexpected benefit is exactly the same. We're able to see the air ambulances operating now within the province, which they couldn't before. 6 months ago they couldn't, and now they can. So it's just a side benefit. So no, that's cool. It is Richard, isn't it? I shall get hold of him straight away. Find a way out.
And I think, and it's that kind of, again, it's like we were talking earlier about standardized data, you know, data being freely shared. That's one of the key things, you know, at Consortiq that we're really passionate about. You know, we want to help with the development of an open and available UTM, you know, data being freely shared, enhancing the safety aspect of all the flights to a standardized data format. You know, and
I have a feeling you'll answer this. I have a feeling if you're an American app provider, you wouldn't answer this question. How are you going to make your money then when it's all free and shared and stuff like that? Because that's good. That's what's busy shutting it all down, I think, at the moment, is people trying to protect their corners of the world.
Yeah, and again, you know, we've got competitors that actually, you know, that we want to collaborate with, you know, because of that sharing of information, you know, where flights and etc. are happening. You know, I can't see why it should be monetized as it might be. And at the moment, again, especially from a kind of an Altitude Angel perspective, I know that's kind of their way of thinking, and that's one of the reasons we partnered with them, because we want to have this free, open sharing of data between organizations, you know, that, okay, we might be competitors in some other industries, in some other sectors, but it's for the greater good. You know, and that's
the greater good. There you go.
You know, that's the way it is. I mean, yes, obviously we need to charge a service for using a system like CQNet. It's quite a powerful tool, and again, some of the features we've got coming up within the development roadmap are going to only make your operations more safer and more efficient. You know, it doesn't all solely rely on, let's say, the airspace data,
Sure.
planning system we have, and the algorithms we have in there, quite powerful tools.
And how much of you, and I'll ask you how much this does cost in a minute, but have you cozied up next to aviation authorities then? Does the FAA know about you, and are they happy with the reports that are produced? Does the CAA know about you? You know, I could ask that question ad infinitum for every regulator there are. So are you addressing that side of the piece? Are you making compliance stuff for each regulator?
Yeah, so we recently set up an office in Washington, in Annapolis, and we have had meetings with the FAA, and yes, they are aware of us. It's still a work in progress, but we hope to kind of further enhance our relationship, let's say, with the FAA. I think as more US organizations begin to use our system, the authorities will become more aware. What we're finding is actually we're being asked to say, can we just give the CAA access to our system? You know, we would like to operate, let's say, beyond visual line of sight. Here is our safety management system, have complete access to it, you know, see how we're operating, see the number of incidences we're reporting, check our flying hours. You know, we've got nothing to hide, let's say. And they're doing that because they know that, okay, that looks great. Here's your BD loss.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So spreadsheet.
Yeah, sorry, so you're right. You're probably going to say with a spreadsheet, it's not quite so easy to track that all down.
Absolutely.
So is yours a CAP whatever approved safety management system with the CAA?
Not at the moment. We are having a meeting with CAA in 2 weeks' time, I believe, to speak with their future development team. One, to talk about some trials that we have planned in UK airspace, but also to showcase CQNet to them. So we would hope at some point we could get some approval by the CAA. I think with the regulators, though, they have to be careful that they don't necessarily stamp a product and kind of enforce that that's the product to approve. But we're hoping in shape or form.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know exactly where you're going. They're very wary of putting a seal of approval on product X, Y, and Z. No, I get that. But you would, you know, I should imagine there is a cap for safety management systems that you have to perhaps ticked all the boxes in. And,
and there's a couple of health and safety ISO requirements that we're trying to meet as well. So one of the development pieces we have on the development timeline, which we're hoping should land in September, is a risk assessment module. So as an operator, you can specify your environment, you can specify the type of flight you're doing, and specify which aircraft you're going to be using. And again, using some of the algorithms we've written, it will begin to structure for you a risk assessment, let's say for your flight. And it will give you a risk score, and depending on the operator and his pilot currency for the type of flight you selected, the risk score can go up and down. With the weather information, again, using the aircraft that you selected, if it's beyond the limits, you again select a different type of aircraft, and it'll adjust the risk score accordingly.
And just run the history again a little bit, because you said you know you're an operator and you really didn't like the paperwork, but there's more than just you there now. You're quite a big thing. You do training and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, Consortiq initially started off as 3 sub companies. There was UAV Air, which was a training provider set up by 2 manned aviation full-time pilots. There was Cloud 12, which was kind of a high-end filming aspect company. And then there was another company that Paul Rigby ran, UAV 8, which was a legal support services working with Peter Lee, quite a well-known legal guy within the UAS industry now. The guy's knowledge is phenomenal, really talented guy. And the 3 organizations, in one shape or form, came together and became Consortiq. And what that gave us was actually a really powerful, let's say, foundation, because we had the training aspect. We had Cloud 12, who carried out the first aerial flights in London for the film London Has Fallen, They were the first UA operators to get approval from the CAA to literally fly down the streets of London, closing streets off to capture that. So the safety case aspect and the understanding of that was quite powerful and quite an education, I think. Again, pulled in the legal services from Paul Rigby with UAV8 and the assistance of Peter Lee. We're now able to start developing what we're calling these ecosystems for organizations. So if you're an organization and you're looking to bring in drone operations, there is a lot of this, you know, what do we need? What drone do we buy? Let's just go and buy a Phantom. But, oh, now we need permissions to fly it. With a Consortiq, what we're doing, or trying to do, is offer training to a level within a specific industry sector, if need be, for the drone operators. They're then supported by safety management software, CQNet, to help manage the flight logs, the flight planning, etc., and everything else. With our partnerships with the hardware providers, help match them with the right hardware that they need to complete, you know, their data capture. So that's kind of where Consortiq was and where it is now. We've got offices in the US, we've got offices in the UAE, and obviously the offices in the UK. And the US market is busy, which is good.
Yes, according to many industry reports, it should be busy.
Yeah.
Yes, allegedly, yes. I'm quite sure it's as busy as some of those reports say. I'll tell you what I find interesting as an innocent bystander is that the countries that these management solutions are coming out of are European countries. Australia and yourselves are coming out with UAS management tools, and they are all countries that have had UAS and legal UAS for several years. So they must have hit a point of maturity where companies are big enough that, oh God, we really do need to sort all this paperwork out now. And you're all quite lucky in that the American market, well, you're coming to it and they've got to learn it yet, and you'll be there as soon as they've learned it.
And that's the thing. And I think, you know, if you look at the FAA, and this is one of the reasons we kind of set operations in the US, you know, with the FAA, there is no mandatory training required. You know, they're quite clear about that. You go to your 107 multi-point check exam, you're done. You're good to fly. But where it kind of comes back and is starting to affect organizations is, let's say you're an organization, you've got a team of 5 drone operators, and you win a big contract for a client, and they say, right, show me your pilot competencies. Show me your safety management system that's supporting your operations. And all of a sudden, actually, when they come to face an audit and they can't tick any of these boxes, they're now looking around going, right, who can give us some kind of accredited training to a specific level, you know? Where can we get a system that's going to support operations to a level of where our client is going to trust in us to carry out their critical infrastructure inspections? From an insurance perspective as well, you know, when they're organizations are now, you know, flying aerotronic systems, you know, or the Pulse Aeros, you know, they're expensive aircraft, you know. How many flight hours has your guy's got? Oh yeah, he's been flying for the last 3 weeks. He can fly that kind of system. Really? You know,
Yeah,
so again,
no.
There's different angles coming now before the regulators have even enforced it, and that's where we see the market going.
No, I think you're right. I think you're bob on right. There's a wise market to go for, and I must admit, again, as an innocent bystander, I've been thoroughly enjoying watching European companies knocking doors down over there and getting there with the systems that work and keep working. So well done to you. Fair play. And I look, we've nearly been speaking for an hour and a half, and we should probably rattle off. Is there any key details that you've that you have not told me?
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything. Again, the system is constantly being developed. We ran a beta for 90 days where we took feedback from our users. And again, because we have our own development team in-house, we're keen to keep receiving feedback from our clients and end users and implementing that as and when we can. The system is by no means standing still. It's an evolving product, and
yeah. So is there if an SUS News we've only got one viewer. If the one viewer wants to have a go, is there a trial system, and how much would it cost me with my Mega Millions company, so with my 10 Inspires, to run your app?
So yes, clients can request demo systems and trial access. We have 30-day accounts that we can set up. That's not a problem. Our pricing structure, we have 2 at the moment that we're still trying to finalise, really to suit different industry markets, because we're being approached by organisations that, let's say, have got 20 pilots, but they're only flying once a month because of rotational issues, etc., and everything else. And we're also looking at potentially a pay-as-you-go service. But we say for the kind of pay up front, as it might be, we're looking at a minimum of 5 pilots because it's an enterprise product. The way it's set up, and mainly because of my IT background, the way it's structured and configured from a cyber security point of view, it's not just a database that's set up on a cloud server that you're sharing your database with other end users. You know, the database is set up solely for your use, as is the app instance on your own virtual server that's separated from everyone else's. So it's an enterprise product. It's pitched at an enterprise level. And we tend to do a price on application from our clients because we want to be able to not necessarily give them a fixed price, but tailor a price towards their operations. Because if they're just starting out, then they're not going to pay, you know, a couple of £100 a month for a system that they're not going to be using and utilising. You know, so we want to be able to go into an organisation and scale with them. And I think that's probably the right approach.
It's a very fair point you make, a very good point too you make as well. So let's be sure about this then. So because I have bought those 10 Inspires, I'm quite a big user. I've got loads of flights handling, all my data, all my critical infrastructure surveys that I have pre-flighted and all that will be sat on my own secure server. No one else can be sneaking in from the side from another job or anything like that. So it's secured data. And is that data kept, is that in the UK, or where exactly is that data sitting? Will it be in the, if I'm an American company, will it be in America? If I'm in the UK, will it be in the UK? Dick.
Absolutely. So we have regionalized data centers set up. We're partnered with IBM. It's all based around the IBM kind of infrastructure, as it might be. We have regionalized data centers by country, and then by the US, we can potentially do it by state as well, depending on the IBM data center locations. One, from a data security point of view, but 2, internal requirements on how data is managed within organizations. In most cases, stipulates it must be housed within their own country, state, let's say. And again, that's kind of what separates us from everyone else. There are out there on the market, you know, that are far cheaper than an enterprise solution, but they might not necessarily have the infrastructure on the back end to support your internal data security requirements.
Well, I think this is going to be a back end of 2017 shock and surprise for a lot of Part 107 operators in America that are gonna, because it's going to take that long for it to percolate out. They're going to do some inspections for, I don't know, some power line company or something like that, and somebody will finally, as they've asked the questions about you know, pilot compliance and all the good things that your stuff does, somebody is going to ask a big question about, well, and where is this data stored, and how have you secured it, and what chance it, and does the machine that you're flying, does that send data anywhere as a matter of course? Does it transmit data out every day? Does it open up the app when you're not paying attention? And yeah, I think back into 2017 there's going to be a bit of alarm, and into 2018 there's going to be a lot of solving of this problem, and this is an opportunity for manufacturers of the airframes and stuff like that to get out ahead of some of the bigger players that dress in white quite frequently. Yeah, there are data issues. I've ranted. Sorry. Back to you, David.
No, but you're absolutely correct. And we're even finding that now with clients that are asking, you know, with regards to which UAS system is sending data where, and where is that data being recorded whilst it's in flight. There are some organisations now that are already switched on to, let's say, data transmissions from specific UAS manufacturers that are storing it necessarily in their own data centres, let's say. So they're looking for a solution where there is none of that. You know, it's a closed system. I only see the telemetry data. I only see the data that's being captured. I know where that data is being stored. And I think
Why isn't this your main? Why isn't this your main sales pitch? We were just going to sign off, and we've got to the most interesting bit. Like five. This shouldn't this be your selling point? Shouldn't this? Whilst it's unique, because it won't be unique for long. Let's face it, other people will offer it, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a key part of the system. It definitely is. You know, the data security and the safety aspect. You know, and the availability of the system as well. You know, again, coming from an IT background, you know, we want to have a high level uptime as it might be. And again, that's one of the reasons we chose Altitude Angel, because their system uptime reports when we went through them were impeccable. I think they have like a 99.8% uptime over the last 24 months. And I think the biggest dropout they ever had was something like 3 seconds. It was, you know, it was really impressive, and that's kind of a level and a standard that we want to meet. And again, I'll talk on for too long, but we've now also we have a 1, 2, and 3 tier support service desk now supporting the product. So you can actually call up the service desk and speak to someone with unmanned aviation knowledge, you know, to support you with using the system, you know, and if need be, with some of your operational planning. You know, again, it's just another level of service that we offer with the product, as opposed to being your online service that you pay X amount for per month. You know, we wanted to take it to the next level, and I think we've done that with the first release.
So do you think you had a little bit of an advantage in that there are a few of those online services out there and you can see what they've offered? So they set a bar for you to jump. I can't think of whatever the appropriate analogy is. You jumped or went under or did something, skipped or hopped. But anyway, they gave you a target to aim at, and you could aim above it.
Yeah, absolutely. And initially we were looking to potentially partner with some of these that were already available, you know. You know, I think I can be quite honest and open and say that, you know, within the development timeline we've had, we're probably up to about £500,000 in development costs. You know, and that's a lot of money for a software system that actually isn't, you know, fully onboarded by clients yet, etc., and everything else. I mean, again, it's only launched at AUVSI. But again, it goes back to that data security. When we're talking to clients and went, look, we're thinking about partnering. No, can't be connected to a third-party system. Okay, so let's look at the smaller market maybe, and maybe we could do something there with this kind of system. No, can't use the third-party system. So then we suddenly realised, you know what? We're going to have to start from scratch. Let's get pads and paper out and let's start designing what we want from a professional UAS operator. What are the requirements, the criteria that we want, as well as that's going to fulfill the client's requirements? And from day one, we just said, look, this is how it's going to be. This is what's going to set us apart. And that's where we are today. Very
cool. Very cool. I look forward to hearing more, a lot more, and I'm sure I will. So please drop us an email, send us press releases, do whatever you have to do when your next big updates come out, and come and tell us all about it. We're very, very keen to hear how it's going. So thanks very, very much for taking the time to talk to me this evening, David. And yeah, I hope we speak again soon. I'll put links in the bottom, so you better just say your web address, just in case I forget to put the link.
Yeah, so you can get us at consortiq.com. All the information is about CQNet and some of the other services and products we provide are available on the website. There is a link on the CQNet page if you want more information, brochures, or a trial system. Just hit us an email and we'll be happy to help.
Beautiful. Thanks very much. I think I might even try and strong arm you into joining us on one of our Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning if you're further around on the globe drone stuff this week hangouts. I think you'll have some useful insights into that when we're arguing about stuff, especially with Bruce the Kiwi. So we'll invite you to that. For those that are here for the first time, if you'd like to subscribe, unlike even, it's the same, it's interaction, it's all good, please do. And otherwise, until 2100 on Tuesday, thanks David, see you all again soon. Cheers.
Thank you guys, all the best.